Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation WFDF. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, November 17th, 2019, and we are live tonight. We have a lot to talk about. It's been a crazy, crazy week. Everybody has been watching the Impeachment Inquiry hearings that have been taking place in the House of Representatives. And I told you back in January of 2017, right here in the studio of 910 AM, the Superstation, I told you that Donald Trump would be impeached. And I said, now this was before Democrats took back control of the House of Representatives. That didn't happen until November 2018. I told you Donald Trump would be impeached. And then back at that time, I said he's going to be forced to resign from office. And I still stand by that. The same thing that happened to Richard Nixon. And Richard Nixon was forced to resign from office August 8, 1974. He was not put on trial in the U.S. Senate. Same thing is going to happen to Donald Trump. All right, so we're going to talk about this in the first hour. We'll talk about the impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump. It was explosive this week as witnesses testified. We heard from Bill Taylor. We heard from Mrs. Yovanovitch, Marie Yovanovitch as well. There was closed-door testimony that took place on Saturday, and it has Republicans running for cover. And then also, speaking of running, we know that Colin Kaepernick held his own NFL workout on Saturday. Okay, it was originally scheduled to be a NFL workout organized by the NFL, supposed to be at the Atlanta Falcons training ground. And Kaepernick held his own NFL workout. There were 8 teams that attended. And Jay-Z says that Colin Kaepernick has turned a legitimate workout into a publicity stunt. Now, the rumor is Jay-Z had something to do with Colin Kaepernick getting the scheduled workout, but the workout was, very strange. The requirements, the guidelines, the day of the week that it took place on, because a lot of the usually something like that takes place on a Tuesday as opposed to a Saturday. You have a lot of scouts that are going to college games on Saturday, scouting college games. So the whole thing was very, very strange, okay? But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that as well. Okay, we'll deal with that in the second hour. And, last week we had an explosive show. I've had a lot of people give a lot of positive feedback about last Sunday's, well, Sunday before last, because I was in Houston, Texas last Sunday. Sunday before last show, where I had a fellow historian, Jamon Jordan, on, and we dealt with the film Harriet. Okay, we dealt with the film Harriet, and we separated fact from fiction. So people check that out. It's on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, also on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. And a lot of people learned a lot from that show, and they said they hadn't heard anything like that in other sources. I find it hard to believe, but at the same time, not really. So I'm going to have a couple of follow-up shows, either on Facebook Live when I'm not on the air here, or we'll do it here. There are a couple of key people, actually 3 key people, maybe 4, that I'm going to reach out to and do some follow-up shows dealing with the movie Harriet. Okay, so look out for that as well. All right, so when we were on live November 3rd, I wanted to talk about Black Women's Equal Pay Day. And didn't get a chance to talk about that. Did you know that the average African American woman over the course of a 40-year working lifetime loses $946,120 in lost earnings? I'm not talking about handouts or anything like that. We're talking about money that was earned but she did not get paid because the average African American woman makes 61 cents for every dollar that the average white male makes. It takes the average African American woman 20 months to make the same amount of money that it takes the average white male to make in 12 months. So we're going to talk some about Black Women's Equal Pay Day. It occurred on August 22nd. It came 2 weeks later, about 2 weeks later than it did in 2018. In 2018, it occurred on April 7th. All right, and this has a wide-ranging negative impact on the economic condition of the African American community. So we'll talk about Black Women's Equal Pay Day. And then also a new study finds that everyone alive today descended from an African woman who lived in Botswana about 200,000 years ago. The new study finds that everyone alive today descended from an African woman who lived in Botswana about 200,000 years ago. And she was Khoisan. And we know the Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet. They come from southern Africa. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. They go all around the world. And we know the Khoisan were here in this land that we call the United States of America at least 51,700 years ago. If you read the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, by my friend Dr. David Imhotep, he thoroughly breaks this down in that book. Last time I interviewed him was August 21st, 2019, the day after August 20th, 2019, and he said that his new book, the follow-up book, The First Americans Were Africans Revisited, is coming out either December of 2019 or January of 2020. Okay, so we're going to get him on the show very soon because you want to find out about that, all right? Okay, I was at Hartford Memorial Baptist Church today for their holiday bazaar, so I saw a lot of people there, saw some of my listeners, so I'm sure they're probably tuned in right now. So we're going to get things going, and you know, I ran into one of my friends who is a book dealer, and I had to get this book from him because I didn't even know the book was out. All right, so you've heard me talk about, you know, I just did a broadcast this past week dealing with Bass Reeves, right? So the movie dealing with Bass Reeves, Hell on the Border, comes out Friday, December 13th. Bass Reeves, legendary lawman, arrested over 3,000 bandits, African-American man, former slave. Some sources say he at one point lived in Paris, Texas, born in Arkansas. And Bass Reeves, it's believed, was the real-life person that the fictitious character of the Lone Ranger is based upon. And Bass Reeves is a former slave, right? So if you didn't see that broadcast that I did dealing with Bass Reeves, I just re-aired it before coming to the radio station. You can check it out at our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Also on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. But Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. talks about Bass Reeves in his book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro. 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro. So I know that he had the 100-part series at theroot.com. Each week he dealt with one of these facts. This was going back to about 2013, 2014. But in and we know that J.A. Rogers, Joel Augustus Rogers, had the pamphlet decades ago, back in I think the 1950s, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro. And what Gates did was each week he took one of those facts and did the research and broke it down and wrote an article about it. But I didn't know that Gates had a book dealing with this. So this is the book, okay? I'm not going to tell you how much I paid for it. I got a pretty good discount on it. But this book came out in 2017, all right? So there's a lot of history in here, so I may be able to squeeze one of these facts in tonight. We're going to try to squeeze one of these facts in each week, okay? Because I've gone through, you know, and I disagree with Gates on some things dealing with the transatlantic slave trade, etc. You've heard me talk about that before, and I provided the evidence and why. But as I've said before, Gates does do some good research, and with all the money white people give him, he should be able to do some good research. If white people gave me as 1/10 of what they give Gates, I could do some better research myself. Speaking of that, if you like the type of information we share with you at the African History Network, you can donate to the African History Network, PayPal. paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, so this week, you know, Republicans were running scared. We saw Nancy Pelosi talking about evidence of bribery. We saw Bill Taylor testify. Bill Taylor and George Kent testified. So let's do a quick recap of some things that took place this week, right? So Bill Taylor and George Kent were the first two witnesses in the House impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump. Now, you know, I don't call him president. Now, I'll call him, in general, I don't call him president. Now, he's the first Russian president of the United States. And when you pay attention to this, all roads lead to Vladimir Putin. Imagine that. Who would have thought that? Now, if you've been listening to me in 2016, when I was warning everybody about Donald Trump, you would know what I was talking about. But all roads lead to Vladimir Putin. But these were the first two witnesses in the House impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump's dealings in Ukraine. And they testified for more than 5 hours this past Wednesday. That was November 13th. And a public hearing that saw both men share new and sometimes shocking pieces of information. All right. Now, Bill Taylor is the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine. And George Kent is a Deputy Assistant Secretary of State who worked on Ukraine and 5 other countries, and they had testified last month, the month of October, for hours in a closed-door setting before the three committees leading the inquiry. All right. So, what we're going to do, I want to go to this recap here before we go to the break. Let's go to this. New details emerge after marathon impeachment testimony. This is from November 15th, the 11th hour on MSNBC. Let's go to this clip. Clip 1. And turn it up in here so we can hear on Facebook.
Brand new testimony from critical impeachment witnesses. None of it good for the president. Marie Yovanovitch, longtime Foreign Service officer, now former ambassador to Ukraine, told Congress and the viewing audience watching at home how Trump and his people worked to drive her from her job. More on that in a moment. The other witness, State Department official David Holmes, stationed at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, appeared behind closed doors for 6 hours, ending tonight. He testified about an incident that we first learned about on Wednesday on live television during testimony from the former top diplomat in Ukraine, Ambassador William Taylor. It was about how Holmes overheard a phone call between Trump and donor-turned-EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland, in which the president asked Sondland if Ukraine would investigate the Bidens. This conversation took place one day after the now infamous Trump phone call with the Ukrainian president. And a reminder, it took place over a cell phone at a restaurant in Kiev. NBC News obtained a copy of David Holmes' opening statement. Here's part of what he said, quote, "While Ambassador Sondland's phone was not on speakerphone, I could hear the president's voice through the earpiece of the phone. The president's voice was very loud and recognizable, and Ambassador Sondland held the phone away from his ear for a period of time. I heard Ambassador Sondland greet the president and explain that he was calling from Kiev. I heard President Trump then clarify Ambassador Sondland was in Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland replied, yes, he was in Ukraine, went on to state, President Zelensky loves your ass. I then heard President Trump ask, so he's going to do the investigation? Ambassador Sondland replied that he's going to do it, adding that President Zelensky will do anything you ask him to. Even though I did not take notes of these statements, I have a clear recollection that these statements were made. I believe that my colleagues who were sitting at the table also knew that Ambassador Sondland was speaking with the president. Ambassador Sondland agreed that the president did not give a blank about Ukraine. I asked why not, and Ambassador Sondland stated that the president only cares about big stuff. I noted there was big stuff going on in Ukraine, like a war with Russia, and Ambassador Sondland replied that he meant big stuff that benefits the president, like the Biden investigation that Mr. Giuliani was pushing. Gordon Sondland has already amended his first version of closed-door testimony once, and in plain English here, he now has a lot of explaining to do. We will hear from Gordon Sondland himself when he testifies in public on Wednesday. That brings us to today's open hearing, the second in the impeachment investigation. As we mentioned, Congress heard from ousted ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. She started with a description of her time as a diplomat representing our country.
I have moved 13 times and served in 7 different countries, 5 of them hardship posts. My first tour was Mogadishu, Somalia, an increasingly dangerous place as that country's civil war kept grinding on. I helped open our embassy in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. As we were establishing relations with a new country, our small embassy was attacked by a gunman who sprayed the embassy building with gunfire. I later served in Moscow. In 1993, during the attempted coup in Russia, I was caught in crossfire between presidential and parliamentary forces.
Let's pause it right there. Okay, we're going to pause it right there. We'll pick it up here on the other side of the break. That was Marie Yovanovitch, the ousted U.S. ambassador to Ukraine that you just heard testifying. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, everybody, stand by. Stand by, everybody. We'll be back in a few minutes here. How's everybody doing tonight? Okay, share this broadcast on your Facebook page. All right, let's see who we have here. We got Rocky, Felicia, just a few of the people watching. All right, and then you all can also donate to the African History Network as well. We posted the link there. We've got Black Migration 1619 to 2019 bundle pack. Available right now on digital download and on DVD also, so I posted that link as well. All right, let's see here. Let's see who we have here. Okay, we've got Amani, Sherwin, Alvin, Gigi, Ya, Michelle. Michelle's in Albuquerque. We got Roger Veal. We got Ashley Jones. How you doing, Ashley? We got John Ray. Working with John Ray. Yeah, visit workingwithjohnray.com. My man John Ray. We've got Vincent. Glad we can get the facts from the black perspective. Yeah, Vincent Crawford. Yeah, I'm going to give you some sources. I'm going to give you a bunch of articles here so you can go research dealing with the impeachment inquiry hearings. Okay. All right, let's see here.
All right, you're good.
Okay, we're back. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, November 17th, 2019, and we are live. Call-in numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. In our first hour, I am talking about the impeachment inquiry hearing into one Donald John Trump, also referred to as the first Russian president of the United States, also referred to as unindicted co-conspirator number 1. Let me just go to this visual aid here. You know, I like to use visual aid sometimes. You remember this chart that I showed you? Now, this came from AM Joy, Joanne Reed, MSNBC. Let's make sure we get all the cameras in here, okay? And is this camera working?
It's this one right here.
Okay. That's the only one working?
No, we can
use that one.
ones.
Can we use this one here?
Yeah.
Please, thank you. And just center. Thank you. All right. If we look at this, right? Now, this is from AM Joy, Joanne Reed, MSNBC, from March 23rd, 2019. The name of this segment, you can go check this out at msnbc.com. Mueller report could bear. Mueller report could be released to public eventually.
Can I get a name?
Mueller report could be released to public eventually.
Gotcha, John.
This is from March 23rd, 2019. There have been 6 people around Donald Trump that have been convicted because Roger Stone just got convicted on 7 counts this past week. Now, just to refresh your memory, see, this is special counsel investigation, right? Got Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen. Paul Manafort convicted and pleaded guilty. Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's fixer, former attorney, pleaded guilty. Michael Flynn, Donald Trump's first national security advisor, pleaded guilty. Okay. George Papadopoulos pleaded guilty. Rick Gates, associate of Paul Manafort, pleaded guilty. Alex Van der Swan pleaded guilty. Richard Pinedo pleaded guilty. Konstantin Kalemnik, Russian oligarch, indicted. Roger Stone, indicted, but Roger Stone's now been convicted. Okay? You realize that President Obama couldn't get away with 1/20th of the stuff that Trump is doing? Y'all realize that? What do you think people would say if 6 people around President Obama went to prison? Republicans almost wanted to impeach President Obama for wearing a tan suit. You got 6 people around Trump that have been convicted or in prison or on their way to prison, and they just run it. They just act like everything's normal. Okay, go check this out. Okay, so just to refresh your memory, right? When we look at this, there were 34 people charged. When we look at the special counsel investigation, Robert Mueller, 34 people charged, plus 3 companies, 7 guilty pleas, 1 conviction by trial, Paul Manafort, 4 people jailed or incarcerated, 5 people sentenced, and then you add in Roger Stone, who has a tattoo of Richard Nixon on his back between his shoulder blades, because Roger Stone, the dirty trickster, was a friend of Richard Nixon and a campaign advisor of Richard Nixon, and also he was a campaign advisor of Donald John Trump. Imagine that. Who would have thought? Who would have thought, right? Okay, so right before the break, I was sharing with you this segment here from the 11th hour, from November 15, 2019, MSNBC. Brian Williams. New details emerge after marathon impeachment testimony. New details emerge after marathon impeachment testimony. So right before the break, we heard an excerpt of the testimony from Marie Yovanovitch, the ousted U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine. Let's go back to this clip, JT.
Her reaction when she learned that Trump had made disparaging comments about her in that call on July 25th.
You said that the Deputy Secretary of State told you that you had done nothing wrong, but that there was a concerted campaign against you. What did he mean by that?
I'm not exactly sure, but I took it to mean that the allegations that Mayor Giuliani and others were putting out there, he said the words that every Foreign Service officer understands: the president has lost confidence in you. The president has the right to withdraw an ambassador at any time for any reason. But what I do wonder is why it was necessary to smear my reputation.
You had left Ukraine by the time of the July 25th call between President Trump and President Zelensky. When was the first time that you saw the call record for this phone call?
When it was released publicly at the end of September, I was shocked and devastated that I would feature in a phone call between 2 heads of state in such a manner where President Trump said that I was bad news to another world leader. It was a terrible moment. A person who saw me actually reading the transcript said that the color drained from my face. I think I even had a physical reaction.
The former ambassador also spoke of her concerns about a cryptic reference from Trump to the president of Ukraine.
What did you think when President Trump told President Zelensky, and you read, that you were going to go through some things?
I didn't know what to think, but I was very concerned.
What were you concerned about?
She's going to go through some things. It didn't sound good. It sounded like a threat.
Did you feel threatened?
I did.
While all this was unfolding, Trump, who was presumably watching at the White House despite denials to the contrary, decided to attack. Quote, "Everywhere Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad. She started off in Somalia. How did that go? Then fast forward to Ukraine, where the new Ukrainian president spoke unfavorably about her in my second phone call with him. It is a U.S. president's absolute right to appoint ambassadors." Not long after that, and in real time, Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff decided to let Yovanovitch respond.
As we sit here testifying, the president is attacking you on Twitter, and I'd like to give you a chance to respond. I'll read part of one of his tweets. "Everywhere Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad. She started off in Somalia. How did that go?" He goes on to say, later in the tweet, is a U.S. president's absolute right to appoint ambassadors. First of all, Ambassador Yovanovitch, the Senate has a chance to confirm or deny an ambassador, do they not?
Yes, advise and consent.
But would you like to respond to the president's attack that everywhere you went turned bad?
Well, I don't think I have such powers. Not in Mogadishu, Somalia, and not in other places.
What effect do you think that has on other witnesses' willingness to come forward and expose wrongdoing?
Well, it's very intimidating.
Well, I want to let you know, Ambassador, that some of us here take witness intimidation very, very seriously.
Late this afternoon, the president offered his own defense of his move.
What do you say to Democrats who say you were witness tampering this morning when you made that tweet?
I'll tell you about what tampering is. Tampering is when a guy like Shifty Schiff doesn't let us have lawyers. Tampering is when Schiff doesn't let us have witnesses, doesn't let us speak. I have the right to speak. I have freedom of speech, just as other people do.
Also today, there were two other developments that could point to future troubles for this president. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the feds in New York are investigating whether Rudy Giuliani stood to personally profit from a Ukrainian natural gas business pushed by his indicted associates, Lev and Igor, who were allegedly helping Giuliani to launch investigations that could benefit the president. And Roger Stone, as we mentioned, Trump's longtime political advisor and ally, he is now a convicted felon. More on that later in this broadcast. And finally, what happened when today's hearing came to an end, something you don't often see in the Capitol. Here is a moment, and here is what happened when the ambassador had completed her testimony. So a round of applause for the witness today. Here for our lead-off discussion on a Friday night, Jeremy Bash, former Chief of Staff.
Okay, we're going to pause it right there. Check out that clip at msnbc.com. New details emerge after marathon impeachment testimony. That's from the 11th hour, hosted by Brian Williams, November 15, 2019. Okay, and you mentioned Roger Stone, right? So Roger Stone was found guilty Friday, this past Friday, November 15th, of all 7 counts against him, including witness tampering and making false statements. And then we heard the thug-in-chief, Donald Trump, who while Marie Yovanovitch was testifying, he tweets on Twitter intimidating a witness. And people suspect this is also to intimidate future witnesses who are going to testify, because you got 8 witnesses. You have 8 people testifying this week. Not only that, Yovanovitch still works for the State Department. So this is what Donald Trump did. So we'll in a few minutes here we'll go to the phone line. Hang on, John, just a second. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. I want to back up a little bit because on Wednesday, William Taylor, and George Kent testified. So I want to go back to that as well. It's a good article from NBCnews.com. 5 things we learned from George Kent and Bill Taylor's impeachment testimony. 5 things we learned from George Kent and Bill Taylor's impeachment testimony. Okay, so let's continue. So Bill Taylor, the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, and George Kent, a deputy assistant secretary of state who worked on Ukraine and 5 other countries, had testified last month for hours in October, for hours in a closed-door setting before the 3 committees leading the inquiry. All right. So here's something that we learned on Wednesday: a new Trump phone call. In his opening statement, Bill Taylor dropped a bomb. He revealed that one of his staffers overheard a phone call between U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, who had to change his testimony once other people were testifying and they were telling the truth. They had to bring him back in. He had to change his testimony. European Union Gordon Sondland and President Donald Trump. This was a phone call that took place on July 26. Now, July 26 is the day after the call that Trump had with Volodymyr Zelensky, the new president of the Ukraine, where he was pressuring him to investigate Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden. All right. So the day after the call between the day after the call between the Ukrainian president and Trump, that prompted the impeachment inquiry. The staffer heard Donald Trump ask Sondland about, quote unquote, the investigations. Bill Taylor testified, later clarifying to lawmakers that investigations meant probes desired by Trump and his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, who's running around with this shadow policy. He doesn't have an official position in the federal government. He's Donald Trump's personal attorney, but he's doing all this stuff behind the scenes. Trump and his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, into former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden, as well as a conspiracy theory about the 2016 election. So Bill Taylor testified that the staffer and Gordon Sondland told Trump that the Ukrainians were ready to move forward, quote unquote, move forward with those probes. The staffer, Taylor testified, then asked Sondland what Trump thought about Ukraine, according to Taylor's account. Sondland said, quote, Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden, end quote. Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden. So this whole thing was supposed to be about rooting out corruption. This is the whole thing. Now, when you look at the memo of the call, because it wasn't a transcript of the call from July 25th that was released, that was a memo. Because when you look at it from NPR, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, NBC News, it tells you that's not a transcript. It's a summary memo. But Trump doesn't mention corruption. He mentions the investigations into Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. He doesn't mention corruption. So, as more and more of this comes out, this looks more and more like a concerted conspiracy to investigate the Bidens. Not to root out corruption, because if Donald Trump wanted to crack down on corruption, all he has to do is start investigating himself, release his taxes. He can start investigating Jared Kushner, his sons. He can start investigating Ivanka. Okay, if he wanted to root out corruption, he could start his administration within his own family. So number 2, another potential witness. This is David Holmes. So David Holmes testified on Friday. Okay, and that was another bombshell. We'll get to that in just a second. While Bill Taylor did not, in his testimony, identify the staffer who overheard that Donald Trump, that Trump-Sondland conversation, 2 sources familiar with the matter told NBC News that the aide is David Holmes, the counselor for political affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine. As Wednesday's hearing got underway, 2 officials working on the impeachment inquiry told NBC News that David Holmes will testify behind closed doors to the committees leading the inquiry on Friday, and he did. And David Holmes is somebody who actually who overheard the conversation. We'll continue with this in just a second. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to John, line 1. Hey, John, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from the east side of Detroit, Imhotep. Thank you. for educating the people about really what's going on. Coach said it never was about Ukraine. It was about Trump and that's what it really is.
It's about Trump and what? You dropped out for a minute there, John. It was about Trump and what?
And Putin, Russia.
Well, all roads lead to Putin. All roads lead to Putin.
That's right. And did you know that the one that was over there in Britain, now he's up in Trump's friend, they said that Russia was spying on them now. So he got stuff that he don't want to tell the country and what's going on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to hold that. He's trying to do the same thing Trump's doing. He hold that a secret. And the MI5 said that Yahoo, the spies, was in Russia when they was cooking up the deal and so forth. So Ben Yahoo and his spies was playing a role with Trump over there in Russia and so forth. So, man, it gets thicker and thicker all the way around. And our governor, the flew over to Israel for some reason. I don't know what's going on that far.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And she said that she wanted to talk to the people of Israel because they had a lot of business in the state of Michigan and so forth. And instead of being suspicious to me now, I'm not claiming, I'm not accusing nobody of that.
Right.
I'm trying to see how it's suspicious and so forth.
All right.
9 a.m. Can I get a
I
name?
want to thank you, man, and good day. You
9
call it
p.m.
and
Can I
you
get a
call
name?
it right. It's 4 times and so forth.
All right, John. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
All right, no problem. So, and then this week, there's going to be more testimony. So it's going to be another hot week, all right? All right, let's continue. So check out this article, NBCnews.com, 5 things we learned from George Kent and Bill Taylor's impeachment testimony. They testified this past Wednesday, November 13th. Now, number 3, Mick Mulvaney, okay? Donald Trump's acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. Mulvaney was part of irregular diplomatic channel. So Bill Taylor testified that White House acting chief of staff Mick Mulvaney was part of an irregular shadow communications channel between Washington and Kiev that had sought a quid pro quo with Ukraine. Bill Taylor and others had previously testified that Rudy Giuliani was involved in a shadow diplomacy team that included George Sondland, Kurt Volker, and then U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker was the then U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, and Secretary of Energy Rick Perry, who's the former governor of Texas, okay? And Kent, for his part, had previously testified that Volker, Sondland, and Perry called themselves the Three Amigos. NBC News and other multiple news outlets have reported, and several officials have testified that Mick Mulvaney, current acting chief of staff for Donald Trump, has played an integral role in the White House's dealing with Ukraine, but Bill Taylor citing him as a member of the irregular team is new. Also, number 4, Bill Taylor took notes. He took lots of notes. He took copious notes. Bill Taylor, responding to questions from the lawyer leading the questioning for the Democratic members of the Intelligence Committee, said he kept notes of all of the conversations related to the White House's dealings in Ukraine that he had mentioned in his opening statement. Asked if he kept notes, quote, related to most of the conversations, if not all of them, that you recited in your opening statement, end quote, Bill Taylor replied that he had. Because, see, he is a career ambassador. He's a career diplomat, okay? So this is part of their training. They take copious notes. When have you heard of Trump taking notes? He'll tweet, but when have you heard of Trump taking notes during meetings? Okay. All right. When Trump has calls with Vladimir Putin, he doesn't want no takers taking notes. Okay. All right, so number 5, a new way of saying quid pro quo. At the start of the inquiry, is the at the center of the inquiry, I should say, is the assertion by House Democrats that the Trump administration engaged in a quid pro quo, something for something, okay, with Ukraine when it conditioned U.S. military aid, as well as a White House meeting between Trump and Zelensky on the Ukrainian government launching investigations into Burisma Holdings. Okay, Burisma Holdings is the Ukrainian gas company that Hunter Biden joined as a board member in 2014. Now, Republicans, including Donald Trump, have denied that the White House engaged in a quid pro quo with Ukraine, with many saying that such a thing was impossible for reasons that include Ukraine not being aware that there had been a hold placed on the military aid. Now, Lindsey Graham this past week started pushing the theory that the Trump administration basically is so, something to the effect they're so disorganized that they couldn't pull off a quid pro quo. Okay? Basically, he's saying they're too stupid to do something like this. That's basically what he's trying to say, without trying to say it. Now, Bill Taylor testified Wednesday that despite being told several times by George Sondland that Donald Trump was confident there was no quid pro quo, Taylor strongly felt that that was not the case and pointed to George Sondland's use of the word, quote unquote, stalemate. He said, quote, Ambassador Sondland also said that he had talked to to President Zelensky, Vladimir Zelensky, the new Ukrainian president, and Mr. Yermak, who's an aide, and had told them that although this was not a quid pro quo, if President Zelensky did not clear things up in public, we would be at a stalemate. This is what Bill Taylor testified. Quote, I understood the stalemate to mean that Ukraine would not receive the much needed military assistance. Okay, so check this out in its entirety. NBCnews.com, 5 things we learned from George Kent and Bill Taylor's impeachment testimony. We'll post a link here on the thread of the broadcast here at our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Now, on November 15th, Friday, November 15th, there was a good segment from MSNBC. There were some lies fact-checking the GOP's impeachment hearing response. Nicole Wallace and Chris Matthews fact-checked Representative Jim Jordan and Elise Stefanik's response to the public impeachment inquiry testimony of former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. Now, Elise Stefanik was the woman who you saw, she's on the House Intelligence Committee. She's a Republican. You saw her kept trying to interrupt. She knew what the rules were. She knew that you could not reallocate time to during the first 45 minutes of the hearing. The Republicans already knew what the rules were. They just wanted to put on a performance for Donald Trump. They just wanted highlights to show on Fox News, because half the people who watch Fox News can't read, don't know how to use the internet, don't know how to fact check. Okay, so then this gives them an opportunity to then hold a press conference and say that the whole process was unfair. Okay, when the facts are on your side, you argue the facts. When the law is on your side, you argue the law. When neither one is on your side, you pound the table. And this is what you saw. You saw a bunch of table pounding. Let's go to this clip.
Fact-checking that, 2 headlines. Jim Jordan still hasn't found her jacket, and Elise Stefanik wants to send Adam Schiff to unanimous consent jail. But there were some lies being disseminated there, and what I don't understand, Chris, is why.
Well, when it's transparent, they know by House resolution they ruled that the opening statement would be shared between the ranking member and his counsel. That's it. There'd be no one else they could yield to. And right in front of the cameras there, they tried to yield to Stefanik so she would do her usual hit job. You know, that's aiming at people who don't know what they're doing. They're aiming at the audience that hasn't been following it, haven't read the paper, doesn't know what they're doing. And it falls upon the Democrats, I say, to at each point they're not doing it, correct their record. Make sure Schiff should have read out at that moment the resolution that said only ranking members in the chair and their counsels are allowed to talk in those first 45 minutes, which they worked out through the whole House. And those people were able to act like they're getting cheated. The tropes here are we're being treated unfairly. There's a transparency problem here. When there's 40 Republicans going down in that, now it's called the basement, now it's called the bunker. It's the skip, but they're going to make it weirder and weirder. But there's 40 Republicans down there. Yeah, they keep doing this. And by the way, when they testify down there in the skiff, that's secret cult-like behavior. When they come forward and repeat their testimony, it's called a performance. There's no way you can satisfy the critics because their goal here is righteous indignation for the 40% of the country that buys this stuff. By the way, I've never heard politicians talk through talking points by listing the talking points. They actually list 1, 2, 3. They actually, you know what, we've been in that business, but they actually said, here are my talking points. And they go through them. And they're the same all the time.
Well, but the amazing thing is they said, oh, the news that Donald Trump threatened our witness in real time?
That's a tweet.
I'm not going to talk about that. That's a tweet. I mean, the idea, too, that anything untoward has gone on. I actually think that the speed with which the transcripts have been made public is remarkable. And a SCIF, just for anyone who doesn't know, is a secure briefing room. It's usually used for reading and sharing classified information, and it's to do the opposite of what they say. Everything that's happened in those SCIFs or bunkers has been released to the public. So the Republicans, you know, they're dancing so quickly because the attacks are sort of undermined almost as soon as they come out of the mouth.
Well, Nicole, a skip is the opposite of a restaurant in Kiev. When you go to the local restaurant, there is a room of spies.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you said that.
You immediately start talking on your little walkie-talkie to the President of the United States, who picks up the call.
Right. So Trump should be in a SCIF.
Okay. That's it. Okay. All right. So check out that clip. That's at NBCNews.com also. We just posted it on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. We also posted it here on the thread of the broadcast. That's from November 15, 2019. There were some lies, fact-checking the GOP's impeachment hearing response. That was all theatrics. They're doing a performance for Donald Trump. That's what that was for. That was a performance for an audience of one. And they made themselves look even worse. All right? So we saw Wednesday, and then we saw Yovanovitch testify on Friday, right? Marie Yovanovitch, the ousted U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine, who was one of several figures at the center of the impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump, spent more than 6 hours testifying before the House Intelligence Committee on Friday, November 15th. The hearing did not reveal much beyond what was learned from her closed-door deposition in October 2019, but it did provide the American public the chance to hear the unconstrained and at times emotional account of a top diplomat who House Democrats hope can be one of the faces of their inquiry. So we already talked about witness intimidation. Donald John Trump, the thug-in-chief, intimidated the witness while she's testifying. 2, stirring testimony. So this is from the article from NBCNews.com. 5 things we learned from Marie Yovanovitch's impeachment testimony. Okay. Number 2, stirring testimony, but no new bombshells. Yovanovitch's testimony hewed very closely to what she told investigators in her closed-door testimony in October. Her opening statement focused on her decades-long career in the Foreign Service, her nonpartisan efforts to fight corruption during her time in Ukraine, and how she was the victim of a smear campaign by allies of Trump and eventually forced out of her position, enabling those allies to push for investigations into the Bidens and the 2016 election. Now, she retold in stunning detail the story of how during a late-night phone call in April, she received word from the State Department that she was being recalled and that she must return to Washington, quote, on the next plane, end quote, because there was unspecified concern for her safety. But when it came to the broader effects she felt her ouster would have on her fellow State Department employees, Yovanovitch spoke more passionately than she had in her previous testimony. She said attacks on diplomats like her have led, quote, to a crisis in the State Department as the policy process is visibly unraveling. Leadership vacancies go unfilled, and senior and mid-level officers ponder an uncertain future and head for the doors, end quote. Okay, so let's see. We saw Devin Nunes flow conspiracy theories. Representative Devin Nunes, Republican from California, the ranking Republican on the committee, delivered an opening statement Friday that was nearly identical to the one he delivered at Wednesday's hearing, once again employing sharply worded critiques that focused on process, politics, and conspiracy theories. Nunes made clear early on how his party would counter the testimony. All right, so he also floated the debunked conspiracy theory, including the disproved notion that the Ukrainians interfered in the 2016 election and the false allegation that Democrats sought nude pictures of Donald Trump. I don't know who would want nude pictures of Trump. Now, you can look at nude pictures of his wife. You can look at nude pictures of Melania if you want to, because she posed nude with another woman back in, what was it, 2005, something like that? Yeah, I mean, people know that. You can go see that. Republicans just act like nothing happened. Now, Republicans lost their mind when Michelle Obama was on the beach in a bathing suit. She's on the beach. She's in the bathing suit. They lost their minds then. Melania posed nude. Oh, nothing to see here. Imagine that. Number 4, emphasis on how Russia benefited. All roads lead back to Vladimir Putin. Isn't that interesting? How all roads lead back to Vladimir Putin. Now, Marie Yovanovitch, with the aid of some of the Democrats questioning her, significantly expounded on her view that Russia stood to be the biggest beneficiary of the Trump administration's dealings in Ukraine. She said, quote, "We see the potential in Ukraine. Russia, by contrast, sees the risk." Quote, "Ukraine is a battleground for great power competition with a hot war for the control of territory and a hybrid war to control Ukraine's leadership," end quote. "The potential benefit to Russia is twofold," she explained. "Withholding security assistance," she said, painted a picture to Moscow that the U.S. may not be the staunch ally of Russia's vulnerable neighbor it has signaled it would be. That's the Ukraine, because 2014, Russia under Vladimir Putin annexed Crimea from the Ukraine. They invaded Ukraine and annexed Crimea. Okay, this is why they were kicked out of the G8. And just a few months ago, Trump was advocating for Russia to be brought back into the G8. All roads lead back to Vladimir Putin. This is why I call Donald Trump the first Russian president of the United States. At the same time, Yovanovitch said, allowing corruption to fester in Ukraine, including empowering officials there to get the White House to remove an ambassador, as happened with her as well, also makes the nation vulnerable to Russian influence. Now, we already know Russians influenced the 2016 campaign, and they're working to do the same thing with 2020. Read Volume 1 of the Mueller Report. Go to NBCnews.com. Search for Read Mueller Report. You can read it for free. Read the State of Black America Report 2019. Go to National Urban League, I think it's .org, or stateofblackamerica.com. Okay? And check that out. I'll get you the actual websites for those. Read the State of Black America Report 2019 that dealt with how Russians targeted African Americans with a disinformation campaign in 2016. Listen to 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep, the African History Network show. We'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, and then, guys, also we're going to, second hour, we're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick as well. We'll be back in a couple minutes. So we have Carlos, got Rod. Okay, peace and love, brother. Okay, Shanika said, hey, brother. Carlos in Birmingham. Is that Birmingham, Alabama? Or is that Birmingham, England? Which Birmingham is that, Carlos? Monty? Because we got people that watch us internationally. All right, if y'all like this type of information, you know I have our 6 DVD bundle pack, the Black Migration 1619 to 2019 bundle pack. It's available right now. We post a link here at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. That includes 6 of my latest presentations. And we know that this is the year of return. 400th year anniversary of August 2016-19.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the African History Network show, right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, November 17th, 2019. We're already in our second hour. Time goes by quickly. Those watching on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, share this broadcast with your friends. Share this broadcast on your Facebook fan page. Also, we're broadcasting on 910 a.m. Superstation's fan page, 910 a.m. Superstation. WFDF on Facebook as well. On Facebook, we've got Carlos in Birmingham, Alabama, because I asked him which Birmingham. Is it Birmingham, England? Because we have people that watch us around the world, okay, on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. He's in Birmingham, Alabama. We got Vincent watching us. Let's see who else we have. Amani, Carlos, Shionika, Rod. Let's see, Rod Jennings. We got Reggie, Bruce, Al Jackson in Atlanta, Maurice. We have a lot of people watching us on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Okay, so right before the break, I was giving a recap of what happened this past week with the impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump. It's very important for us to watch what's taking place because a lot of times I know people are busy, with work, things like this, and may not be able to keep up with everything. Now, the good thing about it is that it was broadcasted, not just on cable news, but also on the major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS. All right, so a lot of people are finding out the corruption. And, I'm a historian. I ain't never read about corruption like this in the U.S. This stuff boggles my mind. I read about corrupt government. I've never read about corruption like this in the U.S. Other countries, yeah. This stuff right here, man. I warned you about Trump in 2016. People didn't want to listen. You see what I was talking about. All right. Okay. So right before the break, I was sharing with you this excellent article from NBCNews.com. 5 things we learned from Marie Yovanovitch's impeachment testimony. 5 things we learned from Marie Yovanovitch's impeachment testimony. Okay. Now, later in the second hour, we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick. Right? Colin Kaepernick on Saturday held his own NFL workout as Jay-Z says he turned a legitimate workout into a publicity stunt. And then also, later in this second hour, we're going to deal with Black Women's Equal Pay Day. Black Women's Equal Pay Day highlights the fact that the average African-American woman loses $946,120 over a 40-year career from age 20 to age 60. Okay? That is serious. That has a huge negative economic impact on the African-American community. Not just African-American women, the entire African-American community. All right? When you add to that the fact that the African-American women carry more student loan debt than anybody else in general. Graduating from a 4-year institution, $30,400 compared to $22,000 for their white counterparts. And then they're on average making 61 cents for every dollar the average white male makes. But there are some states in this country, like Louisiana, where they make on average less than 61 cents for every dollar that the average white male makes. And Louisiana is 47 cents. Okay, and then also we'll talk about a new study that finds that a new study that finds that everyone alive today descended from an African woman who lived in Botswana about 200,000 years ago, and she was Khoisan. All right. Okay, so let's continue with this. Okay, so Marie Yovanovitch in her testimony on Friday, she said, quote, corruption is also a security issue because corrupt officials are vulnerable to Moscow. In short, it is in America's national security interest to help Ukraine transform into a country where the rule of law governs and corruption is held in check, end quote. She said this before directly fingering Vladimir Putin as a beneficiary of the Trump administration's actions in Ukraine. All right, all roads lead back to Vladimir Putin. Okay, yeah, I just find that very interesting. And then number 5, a larger focus on Rudy Giuliani's role as well. According to Marie Yovanovitch, whose account is backed up by the testimony of many of the witnesses in the inquiry, Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani seized on Ukrainian disinformation that she had been bad-mouthing Donald Trump and was blocking corruption investigations to orchestrate a broad smear campaign against Marie Yovanovitch that culminated with her ouster. Okay, so check out the rest of that as well. All right, and we'll post a link here on the thread of the broadcast. Okay, now on, let's see, what date was this? I think this was Wednesday. This was Thursday. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said on Thursday, November 14th, that the testimony presented by two career U.S. diplomats, Bill Taylor and George Kent, at the first House impeachment hearing a day earlier had presented evidence of bribery committed by Donald John Trump. Okay? She said the devastating testimony corroborated evidence of bribery uncovered in the inquiry, in that the president abused power and violated his oath by threatening to withhold military aid and a White House meeting in exchange for an investigation into a political rival. And then let's keep in mind that bribery and treason are two crimes explicitly stated in Article 2, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution when it deals with impeachment. Okay? Let's go to this clip. No, the student, the one I just emailed you. This, yeah.
I got you.
Okay, we'll go back. We'll go to this clip here of Nancy Pelosi here in just a minute. I want you to hear this.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to this clip.
Leveling this new charge against the president.
What is the president has admitted to and says it's perfect. I said it's perfectly wrong. It's bribery.
Democrats recasting their case in plain English, largely dropping the phrase quid pro quo to describe that July phone call between President Trump and Ukraine's leader, where the president asked for investigations of the Bidens and the 2016 election. Pelosi now using the term bribery that's mentioned in the Constitution as an impeachable offense.
The bribe is to grant or withhold military assistance in return for a public statement of a fake investigation into the elections. That's bribery.
But Republicans emphasize that the aid was eventually delivered without Ukraine launching the investigations President Trump requested. Tonight, House Democrats are also preparing for closed-door testimony from diplomat Bill Taylor's aide, who now says he overheard the president in July on a cell phone call with Ambassador Gordon Sondland.
The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations.
The president saying he does not recall that conversation, and his aides dismissing it.
In a real court of law, we would not be referring to something as evidence that is, oh, someone on my staff recalled overhearing a conversation between someone else and the president where they think they heard the president use the word investigations.
Democrats say that call ties President Trump to the pressure campaign on Ukraine. Tomorrow, lawmakers will hear from the former U.S. ambassador to that country.
His name is Bebe.
Okay, let's stay in the clip. Okay, all right, now, that was, so check out the article from NBCnews.com, Evidence of Bribery, Pelosi Comments on Impeachment Inquiry. That's from November 14th, 2019. That clip that you just heard is in that article. Okay, that's from NBCnews.com. Now, so you hear Democrats talking more plainly and talking about bribery as opposed to quid pro quo. So Pelosi's comments come amid a Democratic shift in the language used to describe Trump's actions with regard to Ukraine that lie at the heart of the current impeachment inquiry. Lawmakers had called the president's move a quid pro quo, but have recently appeared to shift to a focus on more widely used terms that Democrats believe may resonate more deeply with voters. Asked to further elaborate on her statement regarding bribery, Pelosi said, well, you know, we're talking Latin around here, e pluribus unum, from anyone, so it basically from many one, from from anyone, quid pro quo, bribery, and that is in the Constitution attached to the impeachment proceeding. Okay, so they're becoming more laser-like focused on their attack as well. So read the rest of this article. Evidence of bribery, Pelosi comments on impeachment hearing. All right, so then on later on Friday, in closed-door testimony, David Holmes, Holmes, a career Foreign Service officer, told impeachment investigators Friday that he overheard a phone call between Donald Trump and European Union Ambassador Gordon Sondland, in which Donald Trump asked Sondland if Ukraine would investigate the Bidens. A source with direct knowledge of his closed-door testimony said. David Holmes, counselor for political affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, confirmed what the acting ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, testified to and revealed on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, November 13th, during the first open impeachment hearing. Bill Taylor testified that an aide, David Holmes, overheard Trump and Sondland on the phone during a lunch in Kiev on July 26, 2019, the day after the call between Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, which is at the heart of the House impeachment inquiry. Bill Taylor said David Holmes informed him that Donald Trump could be heard asking about, quote, the investigations, end quote, and that Gordon Sondland told Donald Trump that the Ukrainians were ready to move forward. David Holmes told the three committees conducting the impeachment inquiry that on July 26, 2019, he went to lunch with Sondland in Kiev with a staffer of Gordon Sondland's and another staffer who worked at the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, according to the opening statement. CNN first reported on David Holmes' statement. Democrats are examining whether the Trump administration demanded two political favors from Ukraine. Investigations into Donald Trump's former vice president, investigation into former vice president Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden, and into Ukraine's purported role in the 2016 U.S. election in exchange for military aid. The military aid, $391 million, was already approved by the U.S. Congress. Now, David Holmes said that during the lunch, Sondland said that he was going to call Trump to, quote, give him an update, end quote, and then did so on his cell phone. Quote, I heard President Trump then clarify that Ambassador Sondland was in Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland replied, yes, he was in Ukraine, and went on to state that President Zelensky loves your ass, quote unquote. I then heard Donald Trump ask, quote, so he's going to do the investigation, end quote. David Holmes recounted according to the statement. Quote, Ambassador Sondland replied that he's going to do it, adding that President Zelensky will do, quote, anything you ask him to, end quote. Now, David Holmes said he was able to hear the conversation because Sondland held the phone away from his ear due to how loudly the president was speaking. According to the statement, he told lawmakers he didn't take notes of the conversation, but that he has a clear recollection of it and that he immediately told embassy staff about the call. Holmes testified that after the call ended, Sondland told him that when it came to Ukraine, Donald Trump only cares about quote-unquote big stuff, such as the, quote, Biden investigation, end quote, pushed by Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani. I thought Trump was concerned about corruption in Ukraine. But that's not what this is about. Now, David Holmes appeared before Congress Friday evening under subpoena. An official working on the inquiry said in light of an attempt by the State Department to block or limit his testimony. Okay, so check out the rest of this article here as well. Okay, I'm going to go to this clip here in just a minute, this other clip, and because we're coming up on a break. Holmes testified he overheard Trump ask Sondland about investigations, okay? And at NBCnews.com, they have a whole section dealing with the impeachment inquiry, so they have all these articles in one place. You can check it out. New York Times has some good information. Now, New York Times, they have a daily impeachment briefing, okay? And I have that here as well from November 15, from November 16. They have a daily impeachment briefing. That's at nytimes.com, so you can get their email to you. Now, you have to subscribe to, I think you have to subscribe to the New York Times. So I pay $15 a month to the New York Times for the digital subscription, so I get all this information delivered right into my inbox, my email. But they have some good information here as well. I don't have time to get through all this, but I've got it because I read this every day dealing with the impeachment inquiry. Okay, all right. So as soon as we're gonna go to this clip here in just a minute, this third clip, House releases transcript of testimony from Morrison and Williams. The House has released the transcripts from meetings with Timothy Morrison and Jennifer Williams in the impeachment inquiry of Donald Trump. So this was a breaking news story on Saturday, November 16th, okay? We'll come to that in just a minute. And let's look at some of this here. So Thursday. So Speaker, let's see here, which one we want to do. Hold on, let's see here. Okay, we'll come to this. So they talk about Speaker Pelosi. They talk about, let's see here, those are the highlights from that. Now, Senate Republicans are conflicted about how quickly to move on an impeachment trial. Some are arguing for a speedy vote, while others see an opportunity to drag it out and tie down some Democratic senators who are running for president. To better understand how the first impeachment hearing played across the nation, we listen to callers and hosts on talk radio shows on both ends of the political spectrum. Not surprisingly, the airwaves offered little consensus. Facebook and YouTube said they would block attempts to name the whistleblower who set in motion the impeachment inquiry, but the tech companies, human moderators, and artificial intelligence tools are struggling to keep up. In an interview with The Guardian, theguardian.co.uk, Rudy Giuliani was asked whether he was worried that Donald Trump might, quote, throw him under a bus, end quote. Rudy Giuliani replied, quote, I'm not, but I do have very, very good insurance, so if he does, all my hospital bills would be paid, end quote. His lawyer jumped in, quickly adding that he was joking, okay? Let's see here. All right. And we'll go to this other clip here in just a minute. And let's see, let's look at from the 16th. Okay, and it talks about David Holmes. So Washington Post has a good coverage of the impeachment inquiry as well. The digital subscription to the Washington Post is $10. A digital subscription to the New York Times is $15. So because what happens when you try to read their articles online, you're limited to like 4 articles a month, something like that. Then you have to pay for, like the first 4 free, then you have to pay. So I have digital subscriptions to both the Washington Post and New York Times. I read them each day. I'm giving you articles from NBCnews.com because NBCnews.com is a free website, so it's unlimited. Okay, so you can read, so you can get all, you can read all these articles. Okay, let's go to this clip number 3. House releases transcript of testimony from Morrison and Williams.
Timothy Morrison was just released moments ago. Also, and these are important individuals because they were both on that call between President Zelensky as well as with President Trump. Let's go straight to NBC News' White House reporter Mike Vicara. And Vic, we start at the top of the hour. We're just about to go to you, and then we get, you know, it happens all the time. We get the email. We think it's because of the OMB official, Mark Sandy, who just left, right? Just left. That might be actually, we'll get some release of what's happening. And indeed, it's of 2 individuals that aren't necessarily top of mind, but are clearly essential because they were in the proverbial room, right? So what did you learn? I know you've been going through it.
Right, and we are still going through it, truth be told, Richard. Looking for some things that we didn't already know from previous released, or should we say leaked information. But first and foremost, I think the thing that jumps out at me, and again, we've gone through this very preliminarily at this point, was that Jennifer Williams, and this is the individual who is the top advisor on Russia and Europe to Vice President Pence, who was, again, on that July 25th call, says she thought it was unusual and inappropriate and shed some light on possible motivations for withholding the military aid that Ukraine was set to get, that $400 million as they fight that action against Russian-backed irregulars in eastern Ukraine in the Donbass. This individual, Jennifer Williams, again, on the call. The other individual, the transcript that we received just a few minutes ago, Timothy Morrison. He is the top advisor on Russia and Europe for the National Security Council. And interestingly, he is the individual who replaced Dr. Fiona Hill, who is one of those people who has marched down there to the bottom of the basement of the visitor center of the Capitol and testified in that secure room, the SCIF. He says that Fiona Hill, talking about Fiona Hill, warned him about this parallel diplomatic efforts in Ukraine, of course.
Okay, let's pause it here. Okay, we'll be back in a few minutes. We'll pick it up on the other side of the break. 9:10 a.m. Superstation, the Future Radio, the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a minute.
What's CJ?
All right, stand by, guys. Stand by. All right, we got Amani, we got Vincent, we got Jeff, Shanika, Katrina in Houston. Can you turn that down in here, please? Yep. All right, so when we come back, we're going to finish with this clip. Then we'll go to, we'll talk about Colin Kaepernick. So Colin Kaepernick held his own workout on Saturday, November 16th. He tells NFL owners and Roger Goodell to stop running. Okay? Free agent and activist Colin Kaepernick made a last-minute venue change for a scheduled NFL workout, citing a desire for transparency by allowing the press to be present. Instead, Kaepernick held his own workout an hour away at a Georgia high school. Bill Rhoden, who wrote the book $40 Million Slave, Bill Rhoden, columnist for ESPN's The Undefeated, was interviewed by Candace Gibson on MSNBC to talk about this. So when we come back from the break, we're going to get into that clip. We're going to get into a couple articles from New York Daily News also about Colin Kaepernick. And then Jay-Z says Colin Kaepernick turned his legitimate workout into a publicity stunt. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It's Sunday, September 17th, 2019. And we are live. Okay, so right before the break, I was sharing this clip with you that was a breaking news story on Saturday, November 16th, dealing with the impeachment inquiry, and this was dealing with closed door, some more closed door testimony. The House Representative releases transcripts of testimony from Timothy Morrison and Jennifer Williams in an impeachment inquiry. Let's go back to this clip. Let's back it up maybe about 10 to 20 seconds. And this is from MSNBC.
Official diplomatic channels, and then this back channel that Rudy Giuliani and his associates had established directly to the president, including Gordon Sondland. He was also concerned that the July 25th call between the president and President Zelensky would have a negative impact on the politics. However, and this has been reported, he told investigators he thought there was nothing illegal about that call, and in the days after the July 25th call, he said he was not concerned about the content of the call, and yet he learned that the transcript of the call, or the summary of the call, had been placed in that elevated classification that we've heard about so much, and was wondering why, in fact, that happened. So again, Richard, we're still going through it here, looking for new bits of information as these transcripts have been released late on a Saturday. And just to review, there was long testimony behind closed doors today from Mark Sandy, of course. He is an official with the Office of Management and Budget, and the reason that is significant is because we are told through Ms. Cooper at the Department of Defense, in other testimony, that the OMB was the one who had told the Department of Defense not to release that $400 million in military aid to Ukraine that they so desperately wanted. And as the deadline, the budget deadline approached on September 30th, after which that money could not have been sent to them, according to the budget rules of the U.S. government, that she had been told by the Office of Management and Budget that there was, in fact, a hold on that money. So the process still unfolding. We're still going through this, trying to find these new information to report to you, Richard, but that's what we have so far.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that was from Saturday, November 16, 2019. House releases transcripts of testimony from Morrison and Williams. That's at MSNBC.com. You can watch that clip there as well. All right, so switching gears here, and we'll go to the phone lines in just a minute. So Colin Kaepernick held a workout on Saturday, November 16th. Okay, so New York Daily News has a good article dealing with this. Colin Kaepernick wows NFL executive with chaotic workout. So Kaepernick took another stand on Saturday, this time after the NFL, just 15 minutes before the lightning rod quarterback was scheduled to work out for 25 NFL teams. Okay, and let me pull up this. Let's flip over here. Let's pull up this article because some of the words are cut off. This is from the New York Post. Okay, this is from the New York Post. This is from November 16th. Okay, so Colin Kaepernick wows NFL executive at very chaotic workout. So Kaepernick took another stand on Saturday, this time against the NFL, just 15 minutes before the lightning rod quarterback was scheduled to work out for 25 NFL teams at the Falcons training complex in Flowery Branch, Georgia, as part of a league-arranged event. Kaepernick's representatives announced the session had been moved 60 miles away to Charles Drew High School in Riverdale, south of the city, near the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Okay, now I was just in Atlanta, what was it, 2 months ago? I was in Atlanta. I've been to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport numerous times. Okay, when they show it on TV and they're doing interviews with people, I know exactly what the inside of the airport looks like. So the stunning move, which left the NFL, quote-unquote, disappointed and seemed to catch everyone off guard, came about an hour before the scheduled workout was set to begin, putting many in scramble mode. Only 8 teams showed up for the workout, Kaepernick's camp said, and an NFL executive told ESPN that the former Pro Bowler's arm talent was, quote-unquote, elite, and he threw the ball well. Now, the Giants and the Jets were slated to attend the original workout, and a Getty Images photo from Saturday showed one man at the workout wearing Jets apparel. However, it's unclear if he was there representing the team. Several NFL fans showed up to the Falcons facility every Saturday with signs for and against Kaepernick. The former San Francisco 49ers quarterback, who hasn't played in the league since 2016 after kneeling during the national anthem in protest of racial injustice and police brutality. Now, Kaepernick's representatives said they hijacked the workout so the media could watch and videotape Kaepernick on the field. The NFL has previously declined to allow any media or cameras at the workout, as Kaepernick had requested. Now, Kaepernick is 32 years old. His representatives also said the NFL demanded as a precondition for this workout and that he sign an unusual liability waiver. All right. So one of his representatives said in a statement, quote, "From the outset, Mr. Kaepernick requested a legitimate process, and from the outset, the NFL league office has not provided one. Now, at the end of the workout, Kaepernick thanked the media and team representatives for attending and said, quote, "Our biggest thing with everything today was making sure we had transparency with what went on." Okay, transparency with what went on. Let's go to this clip here. We got Bill Rhoden. He was interviewed by Candace Gibson on MSNBC. Let's go to this clip.
Turned to activist Colin Kaepernick. I've been ready for 3 years. I've been denied for 3 years. We all know why I came out here and showed it today in front of everybody. We have nothing to hide. So we're waiting for the 32 owners, the 32 teams, Roger Goodell, all of them to stop running. Stop running from the truth. Stop running from the people. Kaepernick's statement following a snap play by the QB, moving an already unprecedented NFL tryout to a new location under his own terms. Part of those terms including making it open to the media. The NFL defended itself in a statement, saying in part they were disappointed that Colin did not show up for his workout. Bill Rhoden, the columnist for ESPN's The Undefeated, wrote a piece recently, just a couple days ago, questioning why Kaepernick would even take part to begin with in what he called a charade by the NFL. Bill joins me here in studio. Bill, what did we witness to in the last 24 hours?
We witnessed, it was bizarre.
It was bizarre.
Because I'm glad I was there, but I thought that I was going to go in, and it was going to be typical NFL.
Yeah.
No access, and we're just going to be milling around, and then we're going to rely on the NFL to tell us what happened. As it turned out, it was a bonanza. We actually saw him for the first time in 3 years. We saw him throw. So it was we were being manipulated by both. We were being manipulated by the NFL, and we're being manipulated by Kaepernick. But at least we saw him, and it's good because after this, I can see no way that Colin is ever going to step foot in an NFL training camp
because of the whole debacle that took place.
Yeah, the debacle, because I think at the very beginning he knew that there was no way, even if he went there. It was a very organized charade. The NFL wanted to basically take itself off the hook. Hey, we gave you a tryout. What do you want? And then, since we couldn't see as a media, then we'd hear at least, well, his arm wasn't that strong and he didn't look that good. We didn't know because we wouldn't see him. Now we saw him. The guy looked great. He threw, and there were his people were there. It was almost like a rally. It was a combination of a workout and a Kaepernick rally.
Yeah. Do you feel like this was all part of Kaepernick's plan to do this last-minute workout at a high school an hour away from the Atlanta Falcons?
That thing was so organized.
The high school part.
The high school part was so well organized. It was a great audible. He basically outmaneuvered the NFL. Which to me is justification for him getting a trial, because you know what, this guy is a great veteran. But it was so well organized. You couldn't just draw this up in the sand. The security was there. It was too well organized for it just to be some spur of the moment thing. So I think he figured that the thing with the NFL was going to break down, and when it did, they were going to be ready, and they were ready. It was actually a masterful audible on his part.
And a lot of people are calling it a publicity stunt. He walked in there with a Kente Kunte shirt, as I noted, as well, and he had invited the media, saying that he always wanted the media there. This is a man who has not spoken to the media in some 3 years.
Right, and he didn't speak. There was not question and answer. So if you want to say was it a publicity stunt? Yes, but it was a publicity stunt by the NFL, and he countered their publicity stunt with an even better publicity stunt. In other words, it's like, and I think it caught the NFL clearly off guard, because they're used to having it their way. And he said, "Oh no, shift." And it was great.
Chess, checkmate,
right.
Checkmate.
Like you mentioned chess. In chess, there's a good move and there's a great move. He made a great move. Again.
So I assume you're thinking he came out the winner.
If his goal is to play in the NFL, no. But if his goal was to basically solidify his base, yes, he came out the winner.
All right, Bill Rhoden, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, all right, so that was from MSNBC. Candace Gibson. Check out that clip. That is Colin Kaepernick. Let's see, what's the name of that clip again? Colin Kaepernick holds his own workout, tells NFL owners and Roger Goodell to, quote, stop running, end quote. So he outsmarted them there, okay? He outsmarted them there. Now, if we go back to this article from the New York Post, so Colin Kaepernick wore a T-shirt that said "Kunta Kinte," right, in reference to the character from Roots. All right, so I guess he's implying that he's being treated like a slave. I guess that's the interpretation. I guess that's what he's trying to say. All right, so only 8 teams showed up for the workout, Kaepernick's camp said, and the NFL executive told ESPN that the former Pro Bowler's arm talent was "quote unquote" elite and he threw the ball well. All right, so in a statement, the NFL said that it was disappointed that Colin did not appear for his workout that they organized for him. The league referenced recent negotiations with Kaepernick's representatives over the workout and citing, among others, media availability and a liability waiver. Quote, Colin's decision has no effect on his status in the league. He remains an unrestricted free agent eligible to sign with any club, end quote, the NFL statement said. Now, Kaepernick said he was alerted of the initial workout only last week. The NFL in February 2019 settled a collusion grievance Kaepernick and his former teammate Eric Reed filed against the league. Eric Reed now plays for the Carolina Panthers and was at the newly scheduled workout. Free agents Bruce Ellington, Kaepernick's former teammate in San Francisco, Bryce Butler, and Jordan Veazey were also at the workout, according to multiple reports. So now Jay-Z, so that was New York Post. New York Daily News has an article from November 17th. Jay-Z says Colin Kaepernick turned his legitimate workout into publicity stunt. Report. So Jay-Z seemed to take issue with the way Colin Kaepernick's workout for the NFL unfolded on Saturday, November 16th. The rapper and mogul believed Kaepernick turned his quote-unquote legitimate workout into a publicity stunt, according to XXL magazine. Jay-Z pressured the NFL into hastily putting the workout together in order to repair his own public image, according to Dan Patrick. Jay-Z said he, quote, took a reputational bullet, end quote, after signing a deal with the NFL to help the social justice efforts, per Dan Patrick's reporting. Now, you know I've talked about Jay-Z in the past. Go check out the video that I did a few months ago. They talked about how Jay-Z cut a deal with the NFL and went behind Colin Kaepernick's back. And all of this is dealing with, one, the NFL has had declining viewership when it comes to the Super Bowl. This past Super Bowl that took place was had the lowest viewership, I think, in something like 10 years. Also, we see that one of the things Jay-Z is going to do is to produce the Super Bowl halftime show. So we know he already brought in Jennifer Lopez, as well as I think it was Shakira, Jennifer Lopez, and I think Shakira, to perform at the Super Bowl taking place in 2020. Okay, you're going to see. So if we step back and we look at what happened, you had top acts like Cardi B, Rihanna, and other acts saying they were not going to perform in the Super Bowl out of respect for Colin Kaepernick and his protests. Maroon 5 performed at this last Super Bowl. Okay, Maroon 5, Travis Scott, and you had, I think, maybe one or two other acts, all right? The Super Bowl halftime show was not good. The overall Super Bowl game had low ratings. And the NFL has a real image problem. So they co-opt the guy who was telling other artists, don't perform at the Super Bowl. This Jay-Z. There was a rumor floated some months ago that Jay-Z was going to buy an NFL team. Come to find out that wasn't true. That was a rumor. Okay? So now you have this. Okay? So Kaepernick was originally supposed to work out at the Atlanta Falcons training facility in Flowery Branch, Georgia, as I said. Now, from the outset, Kaepernick requested a legitimate process, and from the outset, the NFL league office has not provided one. Mostly, the NFL has demanded that, as a precondition to the workout, Mr. Kaepernick signs an unusual liability waiver that addresses employment-related issues, and rejected the standard liability waiver from physical injury proposed by Mr. Kaepernick's representatives. Right. So. Let's look at the, let me flip over quickly here. Let's look at the article from Double XL. But if Jay-Z is trying to save his image, I can understand that. And he just has himself to blame for this, right? Okay, so Jay-Z is disappointed with Colin Kaepernick, thinks quarterback turned workout into publicity stunt report. This is from Double XL, xxlmag.com. Let's see. Let me just take a quick look at this once again. All right. So it's going to be interesting to see if a team picks up Kaepernick, if he's going to continue his protest, if another team picks him up. But Jay-Z, Jay-Z image really took a hit, okay, in this deal with the NFL, and it looks like they co-opted him. It looks like he was a willing participant in the co-option as well. Let's go to the phone lines. Line 1, let's go to Charles. Charles, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Thanks for calling back in again.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Brother Hotep. I really appreciate you taking my call. Hey, look, with all that's being said and done with the impeachment thing.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, what is your interpretation, of impeachment as, not impeachment, but as a whistleblower? Because it seems like everything is scattered out and everybody's talking, against each other. Each seat is saying one thing and another seat is saying another thing. Then you got the Republicans, then you got the Democrats and independents and liberals.
Actually,
it just seems like a puzzle, man. When it comes to interpretation and how it goes with the interpretation.
Actually, it's not that big of a puzzle. Those that are testifying, those that are testifying are corroborating each other's stories. Those that are testifying are corroborating each other's stories, and it is corroborating what was in the memo of the call from July 25th. If you actually follow this,
it seems like a puzzle to me. You know what I'm saying? Because it's saying whistleblower. It seems like everybody blowing a whistle. With the information that's being to and fro and to.
Because there are a lot of whistles to blow, because there's a lot of corruption that's been taking place, and there's been a lot of shady dealings that Trump has been involved in. So all this stuff, all of this stuff is coming out, and there's going to be more coming out this week, because you got like 8 people testifying this week. There's going to be more coming out this week. Go ahead.
You think that might be publicity stunt also as well? There's some of the people who got their own viewpoints and opinions about, to and fro when it comes to what's happening, with the...
a publicity stunt for who? You talking about the people testifying? What do you mean a publicity stunt?
Yeah, and in general, because you don't know who to believe. Me in particular, but it seems like it's just everybody got a viewpoint or a different opinion. What, when, and where.
No, actually, if you follow the witnesses, what they're saying is being corroborated by other witnesses. Even Republicans are not denying the facts. Even Republicans are not denying the actual facts of what happened. The Republicans not even denying that. They're just saying this doesn't rise to the level of removing the president from office. They're not even denying the facts, because it's undeniable. Read the articles that I've been given. You can go and get some more information. Okay, Charles? Okay, keep listening.
Okay, I appreciate your radio show there.
Okay, all right, thanks for calling. All right, and it's Imhotep, Imhotep. Hotep is an offering of peace. Imhotep means he who comes in peace. All right, so So we talked about Jay-Z. Let's deal with Black Women's Equal Pay Day. Now, I did a, what was it, an hour, 2 hours, something like that, an hour broadcast dealing with Black Women's Equal Pay Day. I've talked about this in the past. Now, blackenterprise.com has a really, really good article. Now, this ties into policy. This ties into legislation. Black women lose out over $1 million in their careers thanks to the wage gap. Okay, so this is from October 17, 2019, blackenterprise.com. Now, Black Enterprise, you can read their articles. It's unlimited. They have some really, really good articles at blackenterprise.com. An African-American woman will lose out on $946,000 $946,120 over a 40-year career if she continues to make 61 cents on the dollar that every white man earns due to the wage gap, an analysis by the National Women's Law Center shows. Assuming she and her white non-Hispanic male counterpart begin work at age 20, a black woman would have to work until she is 86 years old. Listen to me. An African-American woman would have to work until she's 86 years old to catch up to what a white non-Hispanic man has been paid by age 60, the press release states. Okay, now read this, because see, this ties into legislation. Because when you read this article and other articles dealing with Black Women's Equal Pay Day, they talk about the Paycheck Fairness Act that passed the House of Representatives in March of 2019, and they talk about the bill to raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour. That passed the U.S. House of Representatives in July of 2019, and both of these crucial bills are stalled in the U.S. Senate, and they're being blocked by son of a Mitch McConnell, and Republicans. I wonder why. I just found that interesting, right? This is an example of how elections have consequences. Now, the National Women's Law Center found that black women face an even larger pay disparity in certain states. In the state of Louisiana, African American women are paid on average 47 cents for every dollar their non-white Hispanic male counterparts make, which is the worst state for African American women's wage equality. Now, this impacts the entire African American family because 70% of African American households are headed by a single female, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that the men aren't involved, doesn't mean the father's not involved, etc. But this has a huge impact on the African American community. Okay, African American women listening and watching on Facebook, watching on YouTube. Could you use an extra $946,000 over the course of 40 years? I mean, you know how many houses in Detroit you can buy with $946,000? So, quote, there's a significant racial wealth gap in America, and black women's wage gap certainly plays a role in it, said Emily Martin, Vice President for Education and Workplace Justice. Quote, for many black women, the cost of the lifetime wage gap comes close to $1 million, and in some states it's more. It's time for the U.S. Senate to follow the lead of the House of Representatives and pass the Paycheck Fairness Act. This is what she's saying. This is in the article, the Paycheck Fairness Act. Women and their families literally can't wait any longer. Now, advanced education among African American women has not been shown to lower the wage gap. In fact, the gap is largest for the most educated African American women. Doctorate degree holders who are African American women tend to make 60% of what their white male counterparts make. Quote, black women have the highest student loan debt of any racial or ethnic group. For an undergraduate degree, the average black woman carries nearly $30,400 in debt compared to $19,500 for white men. The wage gap lessens black women's ability to pay off educational debt, creating an additional barrier to saving money, that could be used to buy a home, start a business, or use for emergencies. Okay? So this has wide-ranging impact. When you read the press release, there are 8 states in this country where African American women lose $1 million or more over their working lifetime, their working career from age 20 to age 60. There are 8 states where they lose $1 million or more. Let's look quickly here at the Paycheck Fairness Act. Okay, now those in states, especially where you have like Republican senators, okay, you want to call a congressional switchboard. You need to call your senator and tell them to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act today. All right. So the number to the congressional switchboard, and I'll give it to you here, is area code 202. Let's pull this up here. Area code 202-224-3121. Area code 202-224-3121. Okay. Now, what is the congressional switchboard? I can hear somebody asking. The congressional switchboard is the number that you call to reach any member of Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate, the congressional switchboard. Now, normally when you call, it's automated. One time I called, it was a live person. Kind of scared the hell out of me, but you know, I said, "Is this a congressional switchboard?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "Usually it's automated. You know, you punch in your phone number. You can get your member of the U.S. House of Representatives, because a lot of people don't know which district they're in. Okay, I live in 14th Congressional District. Brenda Lawrence is my congresswoman. A lot of people don't know. So if you don't know who your congressperson is, how do you know who's behind the kick? How do you know who to put pressure on? Okay. So, you know, because I do this presentation dealing with 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. So what happens when you don't understand that you don't understand that you don't understand? What happens when you don't know that you don't know that you don't know? You know, it's like Robin Harris talking about the man sitting next to the man, sitting next to the man, sitting next to the man. Okay, if you don't know who Robin Harris is, Google it, okay? We baby's kids, we don't die, we multiply. If you don't know who Robin Harris is, I mean, I don't know why. You know, I don't know. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. All right, but Paycheck Fairness Act. Let's look at this article here quickly. Vox.com, Vox.com has a good article. The House just passed a bill to close the gender pay gap. And the Paycheck Fairness Act deals with, let's see, let's skip over that. Let's get to, hold on for a second here. Okay, the Paycheck Fairness Act essentially works to close loopholes in the landmark Equal Pay Act of 1963, which required that men and women receive equal pay for equal work. Okay, you can read deeper in this article. But House Democrats easily passed the Paycheck Fairness Act. This was in March of 2019. Their latest in a long series of attempts to make sure women and men are paid equally. The final vote was 242 yes, 187 no. Democrats were joined by 7 Republicans. This is in the House of Representatives. Republicans are stalling this in the U.S. Senate also. Then we look at CNBC.com. This is from July 27, 2019. House passes bill to hike the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. The federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Yes, you have some states where it's higher, like in Michigan, I think it's $9.50 an hour. But the measure would gradually hike the U.S. pay floor to $15 an hour by the year 2025. The index further hikes to the median wage growth. It would also phase out lower minimum wage paid to tipped workers. These 2 bills that are being stalled in the U.S. Senate, Senator Mitch McConnell, son of a Mitch, this is why he has to be voted out of office in 2020. These 2 bills, if they are passed and signed into law, will lift millions of African Americans out of poverty. These 2 bills right here, these 2 bills tie directly into what we talked about dealing with Black Women's Equal Pay Day and the average African American woman losing $946,120 over a 40-year career. Okay? So check out these articles here, and you have 8 states Black women stand to lose more than $1 million over a 40-year career compared to white non-Hispanic men based on today's wage gap in 8 states: California, Connecticut, Louisiana, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Texas, Utah, and Virginia. I did a more extensive video. It's at our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, and also on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network, dealing with Black Women's Equal Pay Day. I'll go deep into this. And then there was a good article also from Forbes.com, which is a business publication, on Black Women's Equal Pay Day. Here's how women are fighting to close the gap. On Black Women's Equal Pay Day, here's how women are fighting to close the gap. What was the date on this? August 22nd, 2019. And they talk about, let's see, what are the highlights here? Hashtag Black Women Can't Wait. Yes. In this article, they talk about the Paycheck Fairness Act, which passed through the House but is not hasn't passed through the Senate, is one step in the right direction. If passed, the legislation would prohibit employers from viewing job applicants' salary history, require companies to provide pay information by race and gender to Equal Employment, the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and allow employees to openly discuss salaries with colleagues without repercussion. Read this full article. We're talking about real money, okay? This is understanding how politics impacts every aspect of your life, from the water you drink to the air you breathe to the food you eat. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. One of the first bills that Donald John Trump passed, one of the first policies from President Obama that Donald John Trump reversed was dealing with fair pay for women who were federal employees. Okay, and we'll try to pull this up here quickly.
1 minute.
Yeah, okay. Let me see. This was dealing with. This was a executive order, I think it was, that President Obama signed. Let me see. Trump pulls back. I think this is it here. Trump pulls back Obama-era protections for women workers. Okay, NBCNews.com. Trump pulls back Obama-era protections for women workers. Okay, this is from April 3rd, 2017. Read this article. With little notice, Donald Trump recently signed an executive order that advocates say rolls back hard-fought victories for women in the workplace. Okay, so check this out also, NBCNews.com. All right, hey, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Right now, let's correct wrong behavior. Donate paypal.me/the AHN show. Stay tuned for Pastor Mo. Wakanda forever. It's not over till we win. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.